Hello there, this is Craig Stern. I'm recording this video because I promised you that I would do an update where I answer your questions on video. And this is that video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and look at some of your questions and I will do my very best to answer them. First up, we have from The Old Farmer. The lizard race looks good. How many races are planned and will they be fleshed out lore-wise? Let's see. So we've got humans, we've got the licit, we have spirits, which arguably are their own race. You can kind of argue that either way. We've got shadowlings, we've got spriggets, and we have the golems. So 5 or 6 races primarily in the game. Yes, they're all going to be fleshed out lore-wise. Just to kind of give you sort of a quick overview of who's who. The humans are the like the Dundar Empire, basically, is the humans. The licit, the guys I just covered in the last update. The shadowlings are creatures. They look kind of like floating cannonball heads, almost. Little floating hands, and they kind of trail a plume of dark gray smoke wherever they go. They live beneath the earth. They actually feed on the suffering of other creatures. They're actually kind of nasty, but they're also interesting. They're interesting characters. The spriggets are the flying creatures that look a little like gargoyles. They can breathe fire or frost or radiation or shadow miasma, depending on which variety of sprigget you have. They have an interesting history with the shadowlings. The shadowlings actually conquered the old kingdom of Sprigatia and incorporated it into their vast underground empire. The spriggets were allowed to live within the empire, but they were treated as second-class citizens. There was a system of culling that went on in their population. Females were routinely killed in order to keep their population numbers down so they couldn't revolt. They have a long and pretty nasty history with the shadowlings. Spirits are interesting. Spirits are... It's never really expressly explained what spirits are, if they're actually something that's left over after you die, if there's some sort of weird psychic manifestation from powerful size. It's never really explained. But basically spirits are invisible to everyone who does not have psychic abilities. If you do have psychic abilities, then you can tell where spirits are because spirits are forever repeating their names to themselves. They're obsessed with not forgetting their names. Spirits are always forgetting things, right? Because they no longer have a physical form to sort of store memories in. So they're obsessed with repeating their names quietly to themselves. And if you're psychic, you can hear them and you can figure out where they are. Spirits are actually kind of creepy. If they lose too many of their memories, they start to degenerate. They become what's called a jinn. In an attempt to sort of retain some semblance of their old selves, they will inhabit things, right? They will adopt just random. Sometimes they'll inhabit like a dead body, right? They might inhabit a rock or a piece of furniture. They'll possess things, and they can be very dangerous. That is the basic gist with spirits. Golems are steam-powered automatons. So they're created primarily by a group called the Mechanics. That's a human faction that specializes in black market gadgetry and in steam-powered technology. This actually kind of ties in with the Shadowlings. The Shadowlings are the race primarily responsible for mining vibra, which is in turn the substance that is burned to sort of drive steam engines, and that in turn powers the golems. So there's this weird sort of give and take there. I'll go into that in a little bit more in a second. Let's go to some of these other questions here. Robert Vioni asks, I've got a question about the AI. Will the game be challenging? And while making a custom campaign, which I'm really interested in, will we be able to choose only the default AI, divided by difficulty levels, or will we be able to add some scripts to it? Okay, a few questions there. Let's start with the first one. He wants to know, will the game AI be challenging? The answer is yes. That is the goal. The AI is kind of okay right now in the demo. I want to improve it some more. I have a few routines that I haven't quite added yet that I intend to add to make the AI smarter about avoiding sticking its characters in really vulnerable spots. Defensive routines mostly. But yeah, it's going to get even nastier than it is now. That is the plan. And then I will have difficulty levels where, you know, the idea is I'm going to make the AI as mean as I can possibly get it, and then I'm going to add in difficulty levels to sort of selectively dumb it down, right? It's a lot, like, you can't just be like, here's dumb AI, now be harder, right? You have to make really, really good AI, and then just selectively make it dumber. It's the only way you can really do AI difficulty levels. The second question is, when making a custom campaign, will we only have a choice of the default AI, or will we be able to script it? AI will be scriptable. It is not scriptable just yet. Right now, the only thing you can do with the AI to really affect the way it behaves is to add certain victory conditions to the battle. Like if you add a protect care victory condition, that will cause the AI to go after whatever character you're supposed to be protecting pretty aggressively. But I'm going to let you customize it a lot more than that. So that is planned. Let's move on to the next question. SD says, holy backstory, Batman, there's lore in a battle tactics game? Yes. Next question. Antonio Diaz says, I like these small pieces of knowledge. Please continue to share these excerpts with us. So how long will the main campaign be in hours? I don't know yet. I certainly want to make it at least 8 hours long, preferably longer. We'll just have to see. I'm not. It's impossible to really tell, like, before it's done, just how long it's going to be. I don't want to pad it to make it artificially long, right? I just want it to be a good, solid experience without a bunch of fluff. I hate wasting the player's time. That's like a thing. That's a core part of my game design philosophy. So I don't want to make the campaign longer than it has to be. I don't want to put in battles just for the sake of saying, this game has 1 million hours of playtime. So we'll see. We'll see how long it ends up. He asks, will it contain random battles, or, following the most pure Fire Emblem tradition, you'll level what you can in the main missions? I'm mostly planning to go the Fire Emblem route, and that ties into exactly what I just said before. I want to keep this a tight, focused experience. I don't want a lot of fluff, but that said, the game does support that sort of thing. Your custom campaigns can have all the random battles you want if you want to go that route. I might add in a few optional missions just for people that want to, you know, get in some power leveling time. You will not have to grind to beat the campaign, but I might put in a few optional missions just for people that want that extra stuff. And let's see. He also asks, will the main campaign contain generic playable characters? No. The main campaign is going to be Fire Emblem style. Every character is going to be unique and will have its own characterization. Will there be a recruitment system? The recruitment system, insofar as there will be one, will be kind of like you saw in the demo, right? You'll occasionally have dialogue where you might have a choice of different characters you can pay for if you have the money, if you want to recruit a mercenary. You might also occasionally face a dialogue tree where you have to make choices, and that might impact whether certain characters join you. So that's about as much of a formal recruitment system as I'm putting in here, and that's just because there aren't generic characters. This isn't going to be like Final Fantasy Tactics, where there's like a handful of characters that are actually characters, and everyone else is just kind of like clones that don't really have any significance to the game besides the fact that they're in your party and you're controlling them. I'm trying to keep things as interesting as possible and as tight as possible, and that includes the characters as well. So there aren't going to be like just generic recruitable characters. It's all going to be unique ones. And he asks this one last question: how many unique / story characters will be playable? That's an excellent question. I don't know yet. I haven't gotten that all finalized. It will be probably, I would imagine, somewhere in the range of like 15 to 20. That would be my best guess. But, you know, the game's not made yet, so if you guys want a different number, just let me know. I am pretty flexible on that kind of stuff. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Tacitus says, interesting. I'm pleased to see that some thought and depth has been put into the lore. A couple questions about the world that come to mind. Is the Dundar Empire multiracial? Are they governed just by and for humans, or are there others, such as the Licit, in the Empire? It is primarily a human empire. But there are characters of other races that exist within the Empire as well. This is a thing I'm going to develop more, but it is primarily a human empire, but there are those who have sort of joined under different circumstances. That's all stuff that that remains to be fleshed out. But primarily, yeah, it's a human empire. Let's see. What is the world like outside of the Dundar Archipelago? So the Dundar Archipelago is a string of islands that is south of the mainland. There's a continent just north of the archipelago. Imagine, if you will, just for a second, that there's a globe, and right along the equator, that's kind of where the mainland continent ends, and where the archipelago begins. So the archipelago is very hot in the north, sort of temperate in the middle, and then near the south, it's very cold. The mainland is north of the archipelago, and that's the continent of Cerebella. In the southern part of the continent, you have deserts. North of there and on the western part of the continent are mountains. Deep beneath those is primarily where the shadowlings live. The Sprigates live also in that area. You've got lowlands and forest in the southeast and eastern part of the continents, and Lake Alto in the northeast. There's a lot of different factions and creatures that live around the continent. Some of my previous games actually take place in this same setting, and they take place on the main continent. So if you want a whole lot of information on what's going on with the main continent, you should actually probably go check out Sinister Design. Check out some of my older games. They'll kind of flesh it out for you. Or you can go to the Telepath RPG wiki. There's a lot of information on it there as well. And the last question Tacitus asks is, how do the outside inhabitants and governments view the Dundar Archipelago, and vice versa? The Dundar Archipelago is fairly isolationist. Like, they do some trade with the mainland, but they don't really have that much involvement in the mainland politically, or at least they haven't. That's starting to change. What's happened is the Shadowlings have gotten very interested in the Dundar Archipelago recently because they discovered that the archipelago is rich in Vibra deposits. And the Shadowlings make a lot of money mining Vibra and selling it to various human factions like the Mechanics. So they've recently been sort of getting involved in politics in the archipelago in a kind of insidious way. They've been going, and the Dundar Archipelago is governed by a sort of a Roman-style imperial republic. So you've got an imperial senate that governs most of the islands, and they actually have to run for election. So what the Shadowlings have started doing is they've been coming in whenever there's an election and just funneling tons of money towards whichever candidate they think is likelier to win. And then when the candidate wins, they go back and they say, hey, we'd really like a permit to mine on this island. Can we do that? And so they've sort of been entangling themselves, if you will, in the political structure of the islands, and they've been exploiting the local population, but the elected officials have been very reluctant, for obvious reasons, to do anything about it. So increasingly, as this game goes on, I think you're going to find some pretty interesting dynamics between the islands and the mainland, which is where the Shadowlings are native to. Keith Dolan asks, "Awesome, I love the idea for new races. The tried and true high fantasy races were getting a little boring." I agree. "My biggest question about the game is, will it be like Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon, and the like, where you have a linear storyline and go from battle to battle and do what you can in the battle as far as procuring items and supplies, or will it be like Fire Emblem Sacred Stones, where there's a world map you can travel around and do levels as you see fit, as well as a level dungeon you can explore multiple times in order to level up your army and gain extra supplies?" It is going to be closer to Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon in that way, and this just goes back to what I was saying before. I want to avoid putting too much fluff in the game. There will be a few optional missions, but this isn't really a grind fest. You really have to think and play well in order to progress in the game. Okay, this looks like the last question we've got by Clay Drag. He writes, "I'm confused. Were the Striders or the Licit enslaved by the Shadowlings and want revenge?" So this actually gets into the main storyline, and this actually ties into the whole Vibra mining thing. So the Striders, they were a human family basically that was living in the Dundar Archipelago. They were captured by Shadowling slavers and brought to the Vibra mines in order to work. So when the game begins, basically, the mother has died. Their father is very ill. Emma and Sabrina Strider they're just kids. One of the Shadowling slavers takes pity on them and allows them to escape. They're taken in by a clan of Licit, and they're sort of raised as warriors. They train and they plot their revenge, and that's sort of the setup for the main campaign story. It's a revenge tale with a lot of, as you can probably tell by now, a lot of political background and a lot of machinations going on, sort of underpinning all the conflict. So that looks like all the questions you guys sent in. Thanks so much for backing the campaign again. You guys are awesome, and seriously, I'm going to have to stop talking because I'm just going to gush all over the place. You guys are amazing. Please, just give yourselves a little round of applause because you are responsible for the fact that this game is going to get made, and that it's going to be awesome. Also, as I'm recording this, we are hang on, I want to double check till I can get this right. We are $47 away from the procedural level generation stretch goal, which is amazing. You guys are amazing. That's actually something I'm really excited for in terms of the modders. I can't wait to see what you guys do as far as modding in campaigns that make really cool use of procedurally generated levels. I could actually see making a roguelike style campaign in this game using procedurally generated levels and the dungeon tile sets and traps and all that. I think that'd be really cool. Okay, I'm super excited. I don't know about you guys. Thanks again for backing the campaign. By the time this goes up, we will have, I believe, about 2 days left. So this is the home stretch. This is where we got to pull out all the stops. I could be wrong, but I did a little bit of calculations, and if I'm correct, I believe if everyone pitches in an extra $4 on their contribution, we will hit the fourth stretch goal instantaneously, which is that's the one where there's a big branch in the main campaign. So just something to keep in mind. If you bump up your donation a little bit, there could be a really, really cool branching campaign for the main campaign. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.